Hi there, it's Kelvin. In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up and start using the Watercolor Kit for the first time. Towards the end of this video, I'm also going to go over a few common issues you might run into and how to solve them. If this video doesn't answer all of your questions, I'm always available to chat, and the easiest way to reach me is through Etsy because they have this kind of live chat feature. It functions a lot like Messenger. You can attach images and stuff, and it just keeps everything very organized. So the first thing you need to do is download the Watercolor Kit to the iPad. If you purchase the kit on Creative Market or Gumroad, the download is pretty straightforward. There's just a big download button. However, if you purchase the kit on Etsy, there's just one extra step. So after you've made the purchase on Etsy and everything is cleared, you'll be able to download this PDF. Now this PDF is not the kit, it's just like an intermediary step, and you can find the actual download for the Watercolor Kit here. Now, when you download the kit using the PDF, it's super important that you don't use the Apple Pencil because the iPad thinks you want to actually draw on the PDF, so you have to use your finger. And there are two choices for the download. The top one is MediaFire, and the bottom one is Google Drive. I don't really like Google Drive. I think it's confusing, but some people prefer that. I think 99% of people will find the MediaFire link easier to use. So I'm just going to tap on that to open it up in Safari. And it's pretty simple. It'll bring up this little message. Just tap download. And it'll take you back to the previous page you were using in Safari. But the download is okay. You can always check on it up here and see how it's progressing. The file is quite large, and depending on your Wi-Fi speed, it could take 5 to 10 minutes to download fully. Now, once the Watercolor Kit is fully downloaded, we need to go to the Downloads folder on the iPad and open it up. So I'm going to go back to my home screen. Then I'm going to open the File Browser app, this one here with the blue folder icon. Then I'm going to go to my Downloads folder, and I'm going to look for that file here. And it's a zip file, and it's this one here. Now, before we can use this in Procreate, we need to unzip it. And we can do that by just tapping on it, and the iPad will automatically unzip it and turn it into a folder. Then we can go into that folder and see all the files for the Watercolor Kit. So the first file here are the watercolor brushes. The second one is a folder that has the bonus brushes and any updates that I might add in the future. And the third file here is the paper texture. So I'm going to start by sending the paper texture to Procreate, and you don't have to import it or use any of those features. It's really as simple as just tapping on it, and Procreate will automatically grab onto it and then import it. Now, when Procreate opens up like this, it might just open up to the last artwork that you were working on. So you may need to go back to your gallery page, look in the top left corner, and find the most recent file, which is the paper texture. After this, I'm going to import the brushes. So pretty much the same process. I'm just going to tap on the brush file. Again, it'll import to Procreate, and it's going to show up in the brush panel at the very top of the list. This one right here, Aquarelle Brushes 23V1. And all these brushes are really useful, but most of the time I'm using the abstract round brush. And then in my tutorials, I use the eraser brush a lot, and I pretty much always set that to the fine liner pen. I think this makes a great eraser because the edge of it is a little bit rough. Now the paper texture has a few features I want to show you. So it's got this default artwork already placed in there. So of course, you can just turn that off or delete it and then paint whatever you want. It's really important that you paint on a layer below the watercolor texture group. So here's the group that contains all the paper texture effects. You need to paint down here, but you can create as many layers as you want. Now as an example, I'm going to grab the abstract round brush, just any random color, and I'll make an example brushstroke here. There we go. And I want to show you the water blender. So at the very bottom of the watercolor brushes, there's the water blender brush. And then use that to blend your watercolor artwork. Now I see this problem a lot, so I want to emphasize it again. What often artists do is they paint above the paper texture. So if your artwork looks like this, make sure and double check that you're painting below the paper texture group. Now if you look in the kind of white background of the texture, there is a paper effect there. Most of the time you actually don't want to have that, and that's easy to change. So if I open the layers panel and open up the watercolor paper texture group, there's a layer in there called on-off paper background. If I just turn that off, you can see it gives us a pure white background, but it doesn't affect our painting. And I think this is really important for illustrations for books, clip art, anything where you need to isolate your final artwork. Now, as a side note here, if you want to create transparent PNGs with a transparent background, there's a couple more steps to that process, and I have a separate video that covers it, and you can watch that up here. I'll also link it in the description below so you can watch it after you finish this tutorial. Now, the last feature here that I want to show you is how to create more copies of the watercolor paper, and you can do that in the gallery page. So here's the watercolor paper texture. I'm going to click select. I'm going to select that file and then click duplicate. Then I'll click the X here, and now I've got 2 copies. And this is how you can create basically an endless number of watercolor paper textures for your various projects. Personally though, I don't keep a lot of those files on my iPad because they use a lot of storage space, and I usually end up just reusing one paper texture again and again and exporting my final artwork as a PNG. And hopefully that covers the basics, and it should be enough to get you started. And at this point, I'm going to move on and cover a couple of frequently asked questions that I get a lot. So the first one here is weird brush behavior. If you're using the watercolor brushes and they're just like functioning in such a weird way that doesn't look like what you see in the tutorials, and you're sure you're using an Apple Pencil, it's likely you have an unusual pressure curve setting. So to see if this is a problem and to fix it, go to the wrench icon here, go to Preferences, and then Pressure and Smoothing. So you can see I've got a stabilization setting and then an unusual pressure curve like this. And I recommend just to reset this, and that'll give you a chance to try the brushes again and see if they function a little bit better. Another common question I get with the brushes is why the brush doesn't have like a variety of shades in it. Like this brush stroke looks very solid. So the transparency of the brush stroke is connected to the size. So you'll find that if you use a large size brush, it's more opaque. But if you use a smaller size and then press a little bit harder, you'll get a more kind of extreme and interesting kind of fade effect. And this continues as you go to a smaller and smaller brush size. So if you're looking for this kind of smooth effect, but all you get is this, you might just be using the brush at too large of a size. The next common problem that happens is a layer limitation issue. So if you're the kind of person who uses a lot of layers, eventually you'll know that you reach a point where Procreate doesn't give you any more layers. And the number of layers that you get depends on 2 things. It depends on the size of the file that you're working on, and it depends on what model of iPad that you have. So if you need more layers than what Procreate is giving you, and you can't upgrade your iPad because you're a normal person, probably what you should do is crop the paper texture to a smaller size. So right now you see I've got these 31 layers. If I zoom out here, go to my wrench, go to my canvas, crop and resize, and I just shrink this a little bit, kind of cut the outer edge of my canvas off. There we go, done. You can see I'm now able to add more layers. Now for my own personal painting style and what I cover in my tutorial videos on YouTube, I don't usually use more than 5 or 6 layers. Usually I can do everything on just 2 layers. Now the last issue is hard to demonstrate because it doesn't happen to me, but basically something is preventing you from importing the brush file or the paper texture file to Procreate. So for that, first just make sure you don't use the Procreate import feature that's built into Procreate. That has some issues of its own. It's much better to just find the file on the iPad using the file browser and then just click on it, and it will go to Procreate automatically. But if you're looking at the brush file or the paper texture and it just looks weird, like it's grayed out, or it's just a bunch of folders inside folders inside folders, or just some kind of glitchy nonsense, it's likely that one of 2 things has happened to the file. So the first thing is iCloud. For whatever reason, if you put Procreate files on iCloud and then download them back to the iPad, there's a good chance that they've been totally scrambled. This is just a fundamental incompatibility between iCloud and Procreate. Hopefully they fix it someday, but for now, keep your Procreate files away from iCloud. Now the second cause of these kind of unusual importing issues is very rare, but it does happen. It's when the file is downloading, but something interrupts the download, and then it finishes it kind of in a wrong way. They'll usually just look gray, or you try to open them and Procreate will actually give you a warning and say that this file is corrupted. The solution to this problem is to just delete the file and then download it again. You can use the download links in the PDF as many times as you want, and if you purchase the kit from Creative Market or Gumroad, You can also download it pretty much an unlimited number of times. This problem is pretty rare and it's unlikely to happen twice. And that pretty much wraps it up. Again, if your questions weren't answered in this video, please message me on Etsy. I'm so grateful for your support and I'd love to help you.